This is the Nebraska Greats, a weekly podcast as a service to the Nebraska Greats Foundation, which serves former collegiate athletes facing medical needs and financial challenges. Your tax-deductible contribution will change the life of a former college sports hero. Please give online at negreats.org. And now, here's your host, Brett Wetton.
Welcome to the Nebraska Greats Foundation. I'm your illustrious host, Brett Wetton. I am joined again by Mr. Adam Carriker, first-round draft pick, famous Husker, NFLer. And Adam, thanks for joining the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, and as you know, man, Nebraska Greats Foundation, you've been a great supporter of it, and we take care of any former Nebraska student-athlete from any of the colleges or universities that have a medical or financial need, and we've been doing that for a while now. We're grateful for your support. So what I'm really interested in talking about with you today, Adam, is really about Carriker Live. I mean, I see this thing everywhere. It's on Facebook. It's just after each game and before game. I just love it as a former player. And even though I'm an offensive player and you're a defensive player, like we get all past that here in retirement. But how did Carriker Live come into existence? Would you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah. So I'll give you the condensed of a much longer version. I used to hate public speaking growing up. It terrified me. My dad always tried to get me to take speaking classes or speech classes, and I ran the other direction. So as I started doing some of my shows, I started to discover that I actually liked it. And then I started getting invited to do speaking engagements, and I looked at my wife and I was like, I want nothing to do with this. But it's kind of one of those things where if you got something, I don't know that I was scared of it. I would just get really nervous and I really didn't want to do it. I was like, I like to face those things head on. Okay. I'm not a fan of the deep sea, deep water. So I once did helmet diving. If you ever know what that is, you put on a helmet, you can go down, you can walk on the bottom of the ocean. My head is really, really big. The thing fogged up, so that didn't go phenomenally well. I was the first one out of the water because I was like, no, this ain't what I signed up for. Nobody else's helmet's doing this. My big freaking head is causing problems. But anyways, so I started doing some of the speaking engagements, and I just discovered I liked it. And also what I like is the live element. Like my show, Carriker Chronicles, is pre-recorded, which obviously has pluses. To me, the minus is there's no unpredictability. There's no interaction. There's no crowd. And so I went to Omaha World Herald. I said, I want to do a show called Carriker Live. I want to go live. I want to interact. I want to see what happens. I want to just – they're great. They've been awesome, but they're not the most technically advanced group on planet Earth. They said, we don't have the technology to do this. And I said, well, I do. It's called Facebook. It's called Going Live. And so I just started doing it on Sunday nights. And I really enjoy it because I love doing the Carriker Chronicles. I probably enjoy this even more because I don't know what people are going to say. Comments are coming in. I don't know what they're going to say. Half the show relies on responding to comments. It's that way by design. I have no idea if the comment in front of me is going to be good, bad, or not. I try to go through quickly, but it's the unpredictability. It's the live aspect that I enjoy. And it's also, getting to interact with the fans. That's not something I can do in very many platforms.
Well, look, I mean, Adam, you have your own flavor to it. And I think that's probably why, and I didn't know you before Carriker Live. I mean, I've watched you from afar, but you just have a certain twist to it, a certain flavor to it. I think is really people gravitate towards. And look, it doesn't hurt that you played for so long, right? I mean, do you feel like that's a big reason maybe why people are attracted to it because you know the game so well?
So I would like to think that in the beginning, people, remember when I played and they're, hopefully that sparks some interest. I would like to think that as time has gone on, they enjoy the show itself. Like when I go back to Nebraska game, when I went back at first, before I started the show, people would reference, my career, things of that nature. That was awesome. After the show had been going on for a while, people would be like, oh, I've watched your show. They wouldn't even reference my career. I take that as a compliment because that means they enjoy the show itself, not just, 15 years ago when I was playing, because that fades. Am I actually doing a good job or not? So to me, that's what I like hearing now is, hey, I enjoy your show. And they never even bring up my career, which to me is a good sign.
Well, so here's what I hear you saying. And all of us are starting to have, some fear of public speaking. We kind of get over it. So you get over your fear of public speaking. You go into a Facebook Live show where you're reading and kind of filtering the comments in real time. Is that stressful at first? Or I'm sure people do. I'm sure you've got buddies throwing, you know what, I'm going to start doing this to you. I'm going to start just throwing in the craziest stuff just to throw you off. But how was that for you in the beginning?
So in the very beginning, I wouldn't really prepare for the show. I would just sit down and I totally relied on comments. As the show went on, I was like, I think this show's still going to rely on comments. That's and interacting and the live and the fan element. That's the premise behind it. Otherwise, I can just do the chronicles and pre-record everything. But I was like, I should probably prepare more. Like I was prepared to answer questions, but come with topics I already want to talk about. And so it's kind of become probably 60-40, 60% comments, 40% stuff I've come prepared for, which makes it easier. If there aren't comments that I feel are good or I want to address or talk about, I've got stuff to talk about. I'm pretty good at flapping my gums on the fly anyway, so that helps. Sometimes I'll read a comment out loud without reading it beforehand, because most of the time, Husker fans are pretty trustworthy. It's going to be a good comment. There's been a few times where I've been like, probably shouldn't have read that. Or I'll give an instantaneous reaction like, well, that comment was dumb. Let's move on. So I kind of like that, though, because, it's raw. Like I always put Carriker Live and I always put raw in the hashtag. Like that's the raw element of it.
Well, and the genius of what you're doing, too, is you make people feel like they're a part of your show. Right. I mean, how many of the pundits on TV do we can only listen to? There's no two-way kind of interaction. So I think one of the geniuses of that, and again, I've gotten to know you, so and I like you. So it's like, I think that's really smart of you to incorporate people. So let's move on to kind of the second segment of this is going to just talking about, we've got, what is Carriker Live? So what is this kind of morphed into in your life? Because you've been doing it for how long now, Adam?
Actually, I just went through 18, 19, 20, 21, 4 years. 4
years. So what is it to you now, right? Now you've gotten through the public speaking part of it. You're getting the comments. You're not doing show prop necessarily. You're trying to incorporate the 60-40 that you just spoke of. But what is it to you now and what's going on with it?
So what it is to me now, so every time I do a speaking gig, I always save the last 15 minutes for question and answer. To me, it's the last 15 minutes when I ask for a question and answer, just extended onto the internet for 45 minutes. So to me, that's almost what it is. And it's fun because people like signing day. I didn't do a Carriker Live show this year on signing day. I've done it for the past 3. It's the first year I haven't. If I'm just being honest, I had a million things going on. Signing day was kind of like ho-hum this year. And I'll be honest, I kind of forgot to do it because I had so much going on. And I was like, oh, crap, I'm supposed to do one. But I got reminded because people were tweeting and Facebooking and asking me about it. So to me, it's an interaction with the fans. It's that Q&A interaction with the fans that I would have loved as a kid that I hope people enjoy now. So to me, it's that last 15 minutes when I'm done flapping my gums, doing my speaking, public speak, and then people get to just ask me questions and pepper me.
And so what's on the family side of this? So at home, obviously you have more of a schedule to this now, but you've been doing it for quite some time now. So what's that like at home? Is Angie involved with you, your wife, your kids jump? I know your kids have been on there a little bit, I believe, if I remember some of them, but how's that interaction going?
The kids have been on to Carriker Live a couple of times. So I sometimes about every other year, it's challenging with Black Friday, but I'll actually sit down and I will call the Iowa game on my Facebook page. And it's a 4-hour live broadcast, just like I was an announcer for the game. There's been a couple of times I got to use the bathroom. So Jacob would step in and he would do it, and then people seem to enjoy that. So they have been on a couple of times. My wife does all the technological stuff, which it's not extremely advanced right now with Carriker Live. That's the beauty of the simplicity and rawness of it. But there are times when we've done more than others, and any of the technological stuff, she is the one absolutely doing it. I do have my phone right in front of me on vibrate because I don't see a lot of comments. And so she'll kind of keep an eye like, hey, this comment or this question keeps getting asked by numerous people, and she'll text it to me and then I can address it. So I try to answer the most frequently answered questions. Sometimes like my son, Jacob, typically will stay up and watch it, and he'll type in a question for me to answer or something like that too.
How cool is that to have them kind of in the background helping? And then Jacob, I met Jacob here this past year. How cool is that though?
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
The kids love coming on. Like when I do the prediction shows, game prediction shows during the Chronicles for the season, they love giving their predictions. They love coming on. There are unaired Carriker Live and Carriker Chronicles shows that are just my kids that have never made it to air, but they like to do their own recordings and episodes sometimes, so they definitely enjoy that. Okay, so let's turn this just a little bit in this segment here to talk about. So obviously you've played with a lot of guys, Coach Scott Frost, Trev Albert that's coming in now, and we all have our opinions and we pontificate and, to use your term, flapping our gums. Do you run into those guys? Do you get feedback privately from any of them? And how does that go? Because these things can sometimes be interesting, right? Oh, it's very interesting. So, there's been numerous times, but I'll give you an example of when I got to DC, there were some people who were not excited that I was going there. They're like, he's just going to come here and ride the bench. Luckily, I was able to earn the starting job, and I actually supplanted the guy who had been starting. And some people weren't happy about that. And there wasn't a lot of nice things wrote before my first game I ever started in DC. And there was one media member who actually wrote something positive. And the next time I saw him in the locker room, he asked for an interview with me. I was like, hell yeah, I'll talk to you any day of the week. Everybody else, I can't do it here, but I give him a little hand gesture. I didn't do it, but I wanted to. You know what I mean? So now being on the flip side of that, I know how players look at that and how they feel. And so to me, the only thing I ever asked for as a player, I didn't like misinterpretations. I hated partial quotes. I hated clickbait, and I hated misleading information, which technically is accurate, but you took it a different direction. Correct. So to me, if you don't like what I'm saying, because I try to follow all those guidelines, I'm going to be as accurate as I can. I'm not going to mislead. I'm not going to try to clickbait. I'm simply going to give my opinion. If you got pancaked, I'm going to point out that you got pancaked. If you were pancaking the guy, I'll point that out too. As long as I don't mislead or misinform, hey, if you don't like what I'm talking about, change what you're doing on the field. But that does create an interesting dynamic because when I do go to the building, most everybody's really, really friendly and receptive and excited, and I'm excited to see them. But I can always tell some people don't watch the show. So if I said something negative and they're friendly, I'm like, well, clearly they haven't watched the show or they actually know how to receive this. Yeah. But there are some folks, they're grouchy when they see me. And again, I'm unapologetic because I'm not trying to mislead or misinform or partially quote. You're just not handling the truth. If I was doing it differently, I'd feel different about your response. And so to me, I get it, but you got to be able to handle the honest truth. I mean, Troy Walters, I have no idea what happened here because when I grew up watching him at Stanford. I grew up in the state of Washington. I watched him win the Blitnikoff, and I watched him lead Stanford to the Rose Bowl versus Wisconsin. I was a big fan of his, especially being a smaller stature guy. To me, that was very impressive. So when he got hired here, I knew all about Troy Walters. And man, every time he saw me, he was excited. We'd chat. I kind of informed him I grew up in Pac-10 country at the time. And then all of a sudden, there was a summer lineman camp. Okay. And I was invited to be one of the instructors, like myself, Rob Zaticka, some of the other guys. Yeah. And he was very unfriendly, very aloof, gave me the limpest handshake. And one time I caught him staring at me from afar. And I was like, man, what is his problem? He clearly had an issue with me. By the way, after he left and went to the Bengals or he left Nebraska, it wasn't 10 minutes later and he unfollowed me on Twitter. I still to this day do not know what the issue was. The only thing I can figure out is, again, I said the truth. So he was wide receivers coach, offensive coordinator, right? Up until now, so this season, Mark Whipple getting here, what does Nebraska's offensive coordinator do? Like, what do they do? Scott Frost calls the play. Scott Frost is the offensive coordinator. I pointed that out a couple of times. That's the only thing I can figure out that might have made him mad. But that's just one example. And I don't point out a lot of examples, but that is the one because it was there's literally nothing else that could have ever made him mad. And if that's what made him mad, then he needs to not be hypersensitive. So yeah, no, I agree with you. But it's an interesting dynamic because now you're kind of on the other side of this. And again, I think you have a lot of credibility because you played for so long. And I mean, look, you're a first-round draft pick, man. I mean, those people are not hanging around on the street, and so it's just interesting. So as you know, Husker Nation hasn't necessarily been probably happy with the results. We're so close, but especially this last year.
we're so close to these games, we can't get it over, and I realize the tide's moving in the right direction. At least we hope so. And now we have all this mix-up. Has it been pretty apparent to you during your Carriker Live shows that comes through, and people are like, man, we got to get back to the glory days? And I guess the question is, how do you sift through that? How do you address that? And do you notice that quite often?
So it's interesting because you either get the really supportive comments and people who are back in Frost, or you get the people who are like, this is awful, Frost is awful, get him out. Like, there's very little middle ground, hardly ever in the middle. And the toughest times were when Riley was the coach. There was times I would literally come on and I'd be like, Ange, I have no idea like what to say, because I'm going to be honest. Yet at the same time, I'm not going to bury the program. And that was tough, and with Frost, it's still tough, but he's been given more grace than Riley ever was. He's been given more grace than any coach has, rightfully or not. And I do think everyone wants him to work out. I think it's much better for Nebraska if he works out. So I get it and I understand it. To me, you get both sides of the fence. And I've always said, I'm going to be honest. It's been awful so far. Yeah, we had some games that were really close. I hate his demeanor on the sideline. He looks beaten down and defeated and perplexed half the time. I think that rubs off on the players. You can't tell me that doesn't make a difference in the fourth quarter when we keep losing. At the same time, he needs 5 years. And I've explained why. So to me, I kind of had an easier, I don't want to say out, but I could say no matter what happens, he needs 5 years. That being said, he's been awful so far. So it's like I'm not burying him, and I can be honest at the same time. And it's all honesty because I've always said he needs 5 years. Now, I will say this is year 5. It's time. I don't know about year 6 unless year 5 goes better. So it's a little different this year.
It is a little different. There's a lot of shakeups and new coaches and players, and Martinez left. So it's just really interesting. So let's transition this last segment. And I realize we've talked about a few of these things. I just go back to, and the question is, why do fans love Carriker Live so much? It's like, it just seems like people gravitate. I mean, give us a sense of like how many people are following you and watching this throughout a year, Adam?
Well, I'm hoping that people enjoy it because, I'm hoping there's some credibility to what I say. I hope people feel like they can trust, whether I'm right or wrong. What I mean by credibility is more, I hope people trust that I'm giving my honest opinion. Like I said, it's not clickbait. It's not, hey, and I'm not bashing anybody who played with Frost, but it's got to be harder for them to be like, hey, this is terrible, where it's a little easier for me. If Zach Taylor was the coach and he was struggling, it would be harder for me as a former teammate. So I hope that, and you can trust what guys like Damon Benning are saying and Rob Zadiska. I'm just saying that it's a little more difficult for guys like them. And Rob graduated a year before Frost get there. So there is no connection, but you get my point. Yeah. For me, I hope people feel like they can trust what I'm saying, whether they agree with it or not, whether I'm right or wrong or not. And I think it's kind of like a peek behind the curtain. You get the ability to see someone live, to see someone doing it now. It wasn't pre-recorded. It wasn't edited. It's very raw. And I can interact with this individual. And I'm hoping that that's some of the allure to it. So some of the typical numbers. So here's how I kind of gauge that. When I go on YouTube and I look at my Chronicle shows right now, like I have a number in my head, okay, that tells me, hey, either people like this show and were interested or they weren't, and I got to change or do something or be more interesting. It's the same thing with Carriker Live. The number I have in my head based on kind of the averages of the views of the shows, like the peak amount of views I think I've ever gotten was 124,000 views in a particular show. And I think it was 2020. I think the worst is about 50,000. That being said, most shows hover right around 60, 70. So kind of the unwritten goal in my head is like 66, 67,000. That's kind of the unwritten goal.
I'm going to pause you, Adam. Hold on a second. So, and I know some of these numbers. So, I mean, let's just play that back again. 50,000 at kind of a lower end and 124,000 for one show. That's actual people tuning into you. Like, how does that impact you? Does that impact you? Are you just like, oh my goodness? Or like, how does that make you feel? It's a lot of people, Adam.
It makes me feel like people are enjoying the show. There's a lot of Husker fans out there, which is cool. That being said, Nebraska doesn't have the highest populated state in the world, which is completely fine with me. So that's a pretty good ratio, in my opinion. The other thing that I really enjoy is the interaction. Like, Carriker Live always has way more comments than likes, which I think means people like the show to the point where they're not just going to hit the like button, they're going to interact. So there's always about a 2-to-1, even 3 or 4-to-1 ratio on comments versus likes. And I mean, if you look at from an advertiser or a sponsor interest level, that's really what they want to see. If I'm being honest with you, they want the interaction. Oh, hey, I don't do Budweiser because my kids come on the show, but I saw Budweiser in the back for a 1/10 of a second. Doesn't mean much, but I'm interacting and I'm talking about it. And now I know I've been staring at this show for like, who knows, 30 minutes, whatever. That means people are tuning in a little bit longer. So to me, that's a good thing.
Well, I know you have a lot of influence. And so as we kind of tally up all the views, I mean, in a year, give me an idea. What are we talking about? How many views you think in a year, on an average year?
The goal. So where I came
Not the goal. I want to know what, yeah. Give me the ballpark.
So where I came up with 66 or 67 was, if you multiply that by 14, 15 shows I typically do a year, that's 1 million views. And that seemed like a reasonable goal to make without trying to be over the top with things.
I just look, I congratulate you on that, because I think, as we said earlier, that, fans can interact with you. You have a lot of credibility. And honestly, Adam, the more I think about it, you remind me of Joe Rogan. And people say, well, Joe Rogan is just like, why is this guy so good? And what I realize, what I like about him is the same thing I like about you. And that is, you're giving your honest opinion. And you're you have credibility, and you've looked at the knowledge. So I'm not trying to pat you in the back too hard here, but I just think there's something so genuine about that, and it really hits home with Nebraskans, because I think wherever they are in the world, Nebraskans are really great people. We take care of people and take care of each other, and we love our freaking football, man. It's in our blood, and I just. What's your reaction to when I say that? That you remind me of Joe Rogan and how you're just so honest and credible about things.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope that's what I'm hoping people feel they're getting from me is honesty. I'm not trying to push a narrative or push something. I think, we're not going to go too far into the weeds here, but I think that's what hurts certain news outlets, is they're clearly trying to push one side of the argument, whether it's the left or it's the right. Very rarely do you hear anyone just talk down the middle. And sometimes it's left and sometimes it's right, because that's how an honest opinion would be. And I think, that's kind of, like you said, that's what helps Joe Rogan. And that's just what I'm trying to be. Like, there might be times that I make, if football had a left crowd, I would make the left crowd mad, or I'd make the right crowd mad, or the right crowd would be happy, or the left crowd would be happy, or down the middle, or whatever the case may be, because that's kind of how honest talk goes. So I appreciate that.
Well, and people also have their belief system, what you're pointing out, and they're not going to apologize for it. Just like I don't. This is one of the things I like about you. You're not going to apologize. You're not trying to hurt somebody's feelings, but hey, this is an opinion show, and this is my opinion. Take it or leave it. And so I think, obviously we're gonna keep following you, and you've been such a great supporter of the Nebraska Greats Foundation, and I don't know, we're just so excited for you, man. It's still stammering to me in a really great way. Over 1 million views of people checking in with you, and you have the right recipe. It's just, I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. So I guess this kind of, we wrap this up here a little bit, Adam, I mean, what are you looking forward to next year with Carriker Live? Anything, it's the same recipe moving forward? Anything we need to be aware of? Because I know I'll be tuning in.
Oh man, just continue. You know what I'm looking forward to? Talking about wins. How about that? That would be the first thing I'd be looking forward to, is talking about some wins. That would be great. It would make me happy as a fan, as a proud alum, and someone who can be, I'm excited to talk Husker football, but it is challenging sometimes right now, and has been. It would be so much more easy and even more exciting if I could talk about some wins. On a side note, right now, I have a co-sponsor for the show. I'm looking for another co-sponsor. So if anybody's interested, you could hit me up.
Well, there you have it. Adam, I can't thank you. Adam Carriker here, first-round draft pick, famous Husker, NFLer, Carriker Live, Carriker Chronicles. Check it out. It's awesome. I'll continue watching it and sharing as much as I can, Adam. We can't thank you enough at the Nebraska Greats Foundation for coming out today and doing our podcast with us, man. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks for having me, man. Anytime.
This has been Nebraska Greats, a weekly podcast serving the Nebraska Greats Foundation. You can find each episode on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Please give generously to serve Nebraska's former sports heroes in need at negreats.org. And be sure to follow the NE Greats on Facebook and Twitter.